Evening all, welcome back to the channel. So basically today we're trying to fix a warp drive button. Now you think of a button, you think of a tiny little knob, and you think of something that you press your knob, basically then it does something. So you know, you've got your knob, you press it, and then something happens, right? Simple, that's like life, that's like 101, yeah? Well, in this game, for some reason, your knob needs 260 engines to work. What's that about, seriously? So yeah, again, I'm gushing over this mod an awful lot. It's a wonderful example, really, because I find that some things, you know, you get involved with and you're like, oh my days, this is really fun, I love it. And then other times you're just like, what is going on? And this one is definitely one where I'm just like, oh my days, my warp drive button fell off. Like, seriously, where is this ship made? And I would now insert a sort of humorous sort of place to build things, but every time I do that, I usually get it wrong. And you know, I'm British. We make nothing, so I'm going to use a British example here. Where's this place made? Nantwich. There you go. You've no idea what that is, but it's a place up north that's just, well, it's just terrible, really. Apparently, they have only just discovered electric light in Nantwich. It's a great name though, Nantwich. Anyway, so here we go. We're playing a game. We have warped into a rather difficult, populated, nasty place where we'd have an awful lot of bases. A lot of pollution is now feeding these crazy things. I think most of them are exploding ones, so lovely. And as you can see, as we kind of go into our warp enablement center, thankfully we have resources. If we didn't have this surplus of resource, we would be dead. I mean, that's a given right now. And it's only through just a simple fact that we're mining quite a lot of stuff. You can see there's a big buffer being produced. Still needs a lot of work. We need to massively increase this buffer. But overall, I'm quite happy with the fact that we managed to have enough materials to get out of this situation. Spoiler alert, we get out of it. Or do we? We do. And that's... there's not much spoiler in that, I guess, is there? So I think it's really interesting, like the challenge this gives you, because right now I'm trying to literally repair the warp drive ship, right? Because the thing has been broken all this time. And then the power button flew off, so I've got to go and repair my knob. And now it just feels like, you know, I had to repurpose half the thing to make 260 engines. Imagine a knob made of 260 engines. I think that's the soundbite right there for the short. so anyway, so we go. So I think the irony of this whole mod is that it continues to surprise and I guess enjoy. You know, I'm enjoying it, but my goodness, it's becoming a challenge. You can see the little box around the ship as well. We can expand the ship. I just haven't really been able to do it just yet. It's a bit frustrating, if I'm honest, because there's like all these projects. It's a bit like, you know, where you live. You have, like, you know, strewn around you in the wasteland of your life. You have a million projects, you know, take the bin out, feed the cat. And then you have the bigger ones like, oh, I really should build a bin tidy, or I really should, you know, do this or do that. Big things, right? And how often do you get to them? Like, seriously, I've been promising myself to build a bike rack for a long time. Like the mountain biking, always enjoyed it. And it's one of those things where my bikes are literally strewn like a Lime bike in London after the tube strike. Very topical, have a Google of that. Basically, there's a tube strike in London at the moment, which means everybody is using Lime bikes. If you don't know what a Lime bike is, it's a renter bike. So you go up to it, you tap your phone on it, you have an app, you pay a ludicrous amount of money, and then it's an e-bike that sort of, you know, pedals. Currently, they're quite famous Lime bikes because it's what the gangs of London are using to convey around and steal mobile phones on. It's ironically lovely, isn't it, that they're literally renting a bike to come mug you. It's basically a drive-by on a bike mugging. It's the British style. I mean, you know, in America, you get literally people driving by with machine guns. Here, you get a dude in a balaclava on a Lime bike. It's a strange place, but there we go. So this is why, at the moment, you know, there's an awful lot of people riding Lime bikes. But anyway, what happens at the end of the day, to kind of finish my little amusing joke, is people just strew them everywhere. So there are like really expensive districts of London, like, you know, around where Harrods is, Kensington, Islington, you know, Knightsbridge and Mayfair. These are all, you know, the billionaires live here. In fact, quick aside, if you have Netflix, go and watch a program called Buying London. you won't be disappointed. That was my life, basically. I looked and dressed like them, not the girls, the men. And I worked in corporate real estate, not private, but that was my life. So if you want to go and understand a bit about what it is to be a Londoner, go and watch that, because it's fascinating. Anyway, the aside to the aside ends. So let's just finish the aside, which is that people are strewing these line bikes everywhere. So, multi-billionaires are coming out their, penthouse apartments into the streets to find like literally a mountain of line bikes, not stored nicely and neatly, literally piled on top of each other outside your door. And I do love that. And that's kind of coming back from the aside to the main point, which was you have these projects that you want to try and complete. This is an example for me, is I have to try and build a bike rack or something like that, and then bring it back to the game. Gosh, that was an aside to the aside to the aside. In the game, we need to fix the warp drive, and we need to fix this flipping button, this knob, because without this warp drive knob, I can't actually... Oh, there's a police car driving by. He's not going to sell much ice cream going that quickly, is he? That's a good joke. So I think generally the irony of this entire mod is that it just keeps throwing you curveballs. So you think you're getting somewhere, then all of a sudden you've got 260 engines to make. And I think this is a wonderful example of me basically desperately trying to make 260 engines. Now let's talk about some of the mechanics here. So on the left there, you see we have the red chips. We have obviously 2 sets of engines. We have the warp chest, that's the white chest. And then you have things like steel chest and the pipes. Everything is connected now. So we're now able to use warp enablement chests, those white things. So here we don't really need to kind of build a supply to the red chips, for example, because on floor 1, we're doing refining, and we'll probably show that in a bit, that makes plastic that then drops it into a warp enablement chest. And then on this kind of, let's say the first floor, the main floor, we then just have a chest taking out all the things that you need for red chips, which is things like copper wire. We have then the green chips, and we have plastic. So that exact thing can sit anywhere. So a little bit of kind of thought, behind it. You can have a kind of grid where you, instead of needing like a mall anymore, you just can set up a grid. And as long as you keep making those white chests, and you are limited on how many things you can have in the white chest, to be clear. You can't dump everything in there. It would be lovely if you could. But I'm betting you with a bit of clever circuitry, you probably could. But here we have an example where, we've now got our warp plate, so we can start to experiment with things like the warp, I think it's called the warp grabber or something, where you place it on a resource patch and it pulls them in. So we'll show that in just a few moments, because we're not far from completing the, the warp knob. And we can then get rolling again. If you're thinking it's rather childish saying the word knob over and over, I think you will find in the dictionary the example of what the word knob is. It is a control device. So we are correctly using the word knob. It's funny how that got turned into a bit of a diss in the UK. I'm not entirely sure where that comes from, but I always remember growing up, in school, we would all call each other knobs. No idea where it comes from. Obviously, it's just a stupid name. At this point, I was a bit worried that we were running low on resources. I was actually starting to watch the ammo snake as well. You see that ammo snake in the top right? I noticed gaps in it. For a long time, we've had a full ammo belt running around the edge of this. And I started to get a cold, hard feeling in my spine that actually we run the risk here of running out of ammo now. And I did think that was interesting, because this was a real risk that we could lose everything. And I don't think there's many games I've played where you kind of get to let's say the mid game, and then you basically could die. There's not a lot of games like that. I mean, if I think of games I've played recently, what's the big one? Star Void? No, I forgot the name of it. There's things like Oblivion, things like Skyrim. At no point would you get to the mid game and then run the risk of literally losing your character and dying, ever. They'd never do that. Only mods can do that. It's hardcore, isn't it? It's the hardcore mode. And I think this one particularly I'm really impressed with, because it's brutal. You get to a point here where basically you could literally get yourself into a cul-de-sac, and if you haven't made regular iterative saves, you're done. And I think that was my irony here, because the autosaves all defaulted to the point after the warp button. So at this point, I'm all in. This is it. There is no coming back from this. And I had that real butterfly in my stomach of, I think we're okay, but I'm not sure. Like, genuinely, I was a bit worried now, because I think the reality is that we could build it, but did we have the materials to do so? That was the issue. And I think, the simple saving grace was that I spent, a number of play sessions just massively upping the stockpiles. Like, I mean, look at how many explosive ones we've got there. Those turrets are burning ammo big time, and you can see there's gaps in the ammo snake now. So this becomes, quite a perilous moment, and I really, really loved that there was a game that actually gave me butterflies once again, where I'm like, I've just spent days on this save. I am not ready to lose this yet. And it gave me a real steel and determination to say, no, I'm not losing this. I'm massively quickly producing things. I'm running around. I'm trying to kind of manually, get more steel going, get more concrete going. I've created a box. This was a joy, a genuine joy, that I was being assailed from all angles, and I was not entirely sure I was going to make it. A wonderful example, I think, of how these games really do, well, they catch you, don't they? They make you really sort of wonder, what on earth are we doing? How do we get to this point? And I think they're very dangerous, because it's a bit like, and again, if you're a fan of the channel, firstly, I love you, brother. I love you. You're wonderful. And secondly, I play something called eFrontiers, which is a very hardcore version of a space game, if you've never heard of it. And we repair it. Woo! Done. And that thing, we can jump. There we go. Immediately jump. Get the hell out of Dodge. I think that was probably the most tense bit of play I've done, I think, in years. And I loved it. I was sat sweating. Literally, I was sat, almost like a big mound of sweat. Just like, oh my days, how on earth did we get to this point? eFrontiers is a wonderful example of this as well, which is you can spend ages building a ship, months, well, let's say not months, but weeks, let's say, building a ship, mining all the materials, creating the bits, putting it together, and then you jump into a system that doesn't have the ability to make fuel. You're stranded. It's hardcore, brutal stuff. And it does make me wonder if gaming, look at all the death. Can't believe we survived that. And not only do we survive, we now can fix the warp drive as well, which I'm hoping means that we maybe can control when we jump. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? At the moment, we've been auto-warping since the start. And by fixing this sort of third iteration of the warp drive, my hope is that actually that's the last jump. And it feels Battlestar Galactica saying that, but I do feel that feels like it could be that we get to a point where it doesn't auto-jump anymore. And we then control when we jump. Obviously, you're still producing a huge amount of pollution in everything you do. But I think that's okay, because the defenses can last quite a while. I think way beyond an hour. So I think to get an hour on a planet where we could really just mine and fill up the coffers would be just a joy. One of the things I'm not using as well, that I'm sure some of you are going to point out, is loaders. We've got a few loaders built, but we don't really use them. So I think at the moment that's going to be something probably to have a bit of a look at, is to see if we can fix some of the way we're using loaders. So here we go. Here's an example of kind of, thankfully a nice planet, and we can actually go and do some mining. So let's just go through that process. This is something, again, at the moment I do find wearisome, but we're doing it because it's part of the game. We have to do it, and if we don't, get all these resources, we're going to die. So this is why it's kind of important. And I think now that I've repaired my knob, basically we can use these things again. So that's our warp enablement chest. And all I do is basically just build a string of miners that can mine into that chest. Now, I'm not using loaders, and I know I should be. And I think this is where I've got into a bit of a habit of doing this. And I think I've become a bit complacent, is the word, where I probably should be using the game's things properly. So, and an example of this is the warp patch grabber, which you'll see me do in just a moment, because the patch grabber, I think, is really designed to sort of take the I guess, the next step of the game, which is you have the resources obviously being just drawn directly into the ship. We'll show that. We'll get to that. At the moment, this is a really good example of, unfortunately, the flipping process every time that I have to go through to basically get the ship ore. And it does work because obviously everything from this point forward is automated now, or not the guns rather, but you know, the ore being dropped into the ship onto the warp enablement floor, just past conference room B, and then basically we're good. I really want drones though. The ability to have a blueprint for all of that and just have drones slowly build it. Oh, I just need this in my life. And I think this is why I'm continuing to play in the hope that there is drones in the game, because if they're not, I'm going to be really sad. But anyway, there we go. So we have defenses. Most of the time that seems to work. Now we can go basically back. Oh, by the way, we only ever need iron. Like a copper, I think we do every 5th jump. And usually it's because you find mixed ore patches. It gives you enough. You don't have to worry about that. And I do find that makes a bit of a difference. But you know, the irony is that I think so many things in this game just require slow building, and I really do think that oh, there we go. So we've almost repaired the warp engine here. Now what it does is it unlocks the technology, so it doesn't immediately change anything. It just means that you have a technology that's unlocked that I hope gives you a longer period on the planet. Well, I hope it does. I'm not entirely sure if it does, but at some point, my assumption here, and again, don't spoiler this for me, but is that you would have the ability to guide the warp ships. Because you actually track all of these planets. You have a list of them, and you can then maybe return to them. That would be kind of nice. I'd like that. But so far, my assumption is that's probably where the end game for this mod is. But let's see. And we then repair the thing. Almost. Again, engines. I don't know why, but seems we need a lot of engines for this warp ship. And I think that has been pretty much the biggest issue of the entire run through. But you know, it's basically working. I think we've got to a point where we managed to provide and, let's say, survive the warp knob flying off. And it's so annoying when your knob flies off in it. And there we go. So we fixed it. So it's now repaired. We do have to upgrade it. So this is upgrade 3. I'm not sure we've done it or not. So I have to go and look for it, but it might be locked behind some of the walls further down. But anyway, lots to do. Exciting stuff. I do love this mod. I think you should definitely be playing it. I think it's one of the rare moments where you just see Factorio bloom into an entirely different game. You're not just building a base anymore. You're building a thing that moves. And one of the beauties of it is just you can't get onto the ore patches long enough. It just takes too long. And I do think there's something very enjoyable about that. But there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. Join us next time, because we're slowly progressing towards things like warp enablement. And I think the warp enablement patches and ore patches and that we'll show that next time, because they're really quite interesting. They're not particularly effective, but under a bit of research, I think they probably could be. But there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time.